The Earth had been dead for so long that even its scars had turned to dust. The oceans were shallow salt plains now, windswept and endless, their waves stilled into crystalline deserts. Forests had burned away eons ago, leaving behind nothing but petrified skeletons of trees, black against pale horizons. Even the continents themselves had shifted, tectonic plates grinding new patterns into a surface no living human eye had seen in 500,000 years. Above it all, the sky stretched unbroken and empty. Stars wheeled silently across the void, indifferent witnesses to the silence below. And then, without warning, without mercy, the silence cracked. From deep beneath the Atlantic Trench, something moved. The seabed trembled as titanic slabs of steel, longer than mountain ranges, thicker than city walls, began to split apart. They had been welded shut since before language had shifted into unrecognizable shapes, sealed by hands that had known they would never see the doors open again. Now those doors shuddered, groaned, and slowly ground away, spilling black water into chambers that had not known light since humanity still walked the earth. At first it was only a tremor. Then came the roar. Water exploded upward in towering geysers as the first hull breached the surface. A leviathan of steel and alloy, its flanks scarred with the burn marks of wars fought before recorded memory, rose with terrible grace. Steam hissed from ruptured vents, boiling the surface around it into a foggy veil. The massive warship broke the ocean as if claiming it, its bow angled toward the starlight above. The name etched into its armored hull glistened faintly as the spray washed across it, Terran Sovereign Vessel Revelation. Behind it, the ocean tore apart again. And again. Hundreds of massive shapes surged upward, parting waves, displacing millions of tons of black water. Ships shaped like spears. Ships shaped like blades. A fleet of giants, climbing one by one from their abyssal crypt, taking their place beneath the long-forgotten stars. Inside the revelation, darkness gave way to light. Power conduits hummed to life, their glow racing like veins through endless corridors. Vast chambers thrummed as reactors stirred, fusion cores igniting after sleeping for an eternity of silence. Doors hissed open across decks that had never known footsteps, releasing stale air into recycled winds. Consoles flickered awake in the command center, holographic panels spilling their data into the air. And in the heart of the ship, the neural bridge, something far older than machines awoke. Command Core Online, intoned a voice, steady and precise. Admiral Jonathan Reeves, reinstating. A shimmer of light formed at the center of the bridge, coalescing into the faint figure of a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, with iron-gray hair and eyes that burned with the sharpness of command, he stood as though he had never died. The hologram was not a ghost, not truly, it was data woven with fragments of memory, a soul carved into circuitry. But as his gaze swept across the bridge, there was no mistaking the authority in it. Admiral Jonathan Reeves had returned. More lights flared across the bridge, more figures taking shape. Captain Sarah Whitfield appeared beside him, her uniform immaculate, her eyes keen with intelligence. Commodore Marcus Hale materialized next, jaw tight, posture sharp, the air of a man who had always carried the burden of impossible orders. Lieutenant Emma Carter flickered into form by the tactical display, her youthful determination preserved forever in code. They were not alive in flesh. They were echoes, programmed with every decision, every instinct, every fury that their real selves had once carried. Yet on the bridge, as the ship rumbled beneath their feet, they looked as real as any crew that had ever lived. Reeves's voice cut through the chamber. Status. Whitfield glanced at the streaming data beside her. Her hands moved through the holographic console with the ease of long practice. Fleet integrity, 89%. Hull degradation on outer vessels, but all primary frameworks hold. Weapons systems, operational. FTL drives, she paused. Dormant, but reawakening. Communications? Reeves asked. Silent, Carter replied, her brow furrowed. 500,000 years of drift. No human signals, no allied channels. The galaxy's voices are unrecognizable. Hale's voice was low, edged with steel. And yet here we are. The Admiral turned toward the forward view, where the external cameras showed the ocean boiling off the hull. Beyond, through the fog of steam, stars burned cold and unfamiliar. Reeves's holographic form stood tall as he took it all in. This was always the plan, he said, more to himself than to his crew. When the last human fell, we remained. When the world ended, we endured. And now, his eyes narrowed. Now the galaxy will remember us. For a moment, the holograms were silent. Whitfield's gaze softened, her voice quieter, almost human in its hesitation. Sir, humanity is gone. Their cities, their families, their history, ashes. We are all that remains. Reeves looked at her, his expression calm but unyielding. Then we will be their memory. Their vengeance. The galaxy thought extinction meant surrender. His voice sharpened. That was their mistake. Beneath them, the Revelation's thrusters engaged with a rising thunder, the ocean hissing as it peeled away from the armored flanks. Above the horizon, the black silhouettes of hundreds more warships rose in formation. 1,000 shadows in the night sky, ascending together, their hulls glinting like teeth. They hung there in silence, arrayed over the planet that had birthed them, their formation as disciplined as the day they had been ordered into slumber. The earth beneath them lay broken, but the fleet stood unbroken. Reeves's gaze swept over the armada. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Wake every ship, every commander. It begins now. Whitfield nodded, her fingers slicing through the console. Across the void, the other warships stirred as their own bridges lit with holographic command crews. Ghosts awakened in unison, 1,000 voices from the past rising into the present. On the tactical display, the galaxy began to take shape, mapped by sensors that pierced the void, revealing civilizations scattered across the spiral arms. Names streamed across the display: XYR Dominion, Arakthal Empire, Varen Unity. Thousands more. Empires that had risen after humanity's fall, their banners sprawled across territories that had once trembled at human fleets. Reeves studied the map in silence. A galaxy that believed itself unchallenged. Civilizations fat with victory, confident that humanity had vanished forever. His lips curled into the faintest shadow of a smile. 500,000 years, he murmured. They forgot us. Let's remind them. And in the cold orbit above a lifeless Earth, the hidden fleet formed into lines of war. The stars themselves seemed to shiver at the sight, as if remembering what they had once known. The dead had awakened. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The first to notice them were not the mighty empires, nor the great councils that claimed dominion over half the stars. It was a patrol. The Arakthal Empire, cold-blooded reptiles with scales like obsidian and eyes like molten amber, had long since claimed Sol as nothing more than a husk. To them, Earth was a curiosity, a once-inhabited grave world whose people had burned too brightly and too briefly. They used the system as a border marker, a place for routine sweeps and fuel caches. To their admirals, it was nothing more than a dot on a navigational chart. On this day, it was Commander Varys Katal who bore responsibility for that dot. His patrol fleet, 30 warships strong, drifted through the dark just beyond Neptune's orbit. His officers were bored, their claws tapping consoles with irritation, their voices low as they muttered about wasted time. Nothing had ever come out of Sol. Nothing would come out of Sol. Until it did. A voice broke the monotony. Commander, unusual energy signatures. Bearing, core ward. Varys's slitted eyes narrowed. Clarify. Multiple blooms, the sensor officer replied, mandibles twitching with unease. High-yield reactors, but ancient. The signatures match no known registry. Varys slithered closer to the forward display, his massive form casting shadows across the bridge. At first, he thought it was sensor static, a ghost reading. Then the imagery clarified. They emerged from Earth's orbit like shadows uncoiling. Hulls larger than anything the Arakthal had ever constructed, rising in perfect formation. Their designs were alien, angular, but their intent was unmistakable. The officer's voice broke into a hiss. By the stars, they are human. The bridge fell silent. For a long moment, Varys heard nothing but the steady hum of the ship's engines and the faint hiss of recycled air. Humans were myths, ashes in the wind. No one alive had seen one, not even in rumor. Yet here, on his screen, their ships rose like the dead walking. Impossible, Varys growled, though his claws clenched tight around the railing. Humanity perished 500,000 cycles ago. Another officer whispered, almost in awe. Then what are those? Varys had no answer. On board the Revelation, Admiral Jonathan Reeves watched the patrol fleet unfold across his tactical display. 30 ships, light cruisers by Terran standards, arrayed in a loose formation. Their shields flickered faintly, their reactors humming at half capacity. They were complacent, expecting nothing, prepared for nothing. Arakthal, Whitfield reported, recognition in her tone. Their empire must have spread into Sol after we fell silent. They don't recognize us. Then let's reacquaint them, Reeves said evenly. Hale stepped closer, jaw tightening. 30 ships against our 1,000. Not even sport, Admiral. This isn't about sport, Reeves replied, eyes locked on the enemy formation. It's about message. On the bridge, Emma Carter stood by the weapons display, her young face tense. Orders, sir? Reeves's voice carried no hesitation. Target their command cruiser. No warnings. No negotiations. Fire when ready. Carter's holographic hands flew over the console. The Revelation's main cannon rotated, locking onto the Arakthal flagship. Power surged through conduits, humming like a heartbeat that shook the ship's bones. For a fraction of a second, there was silence. Then came the shot. A lance of antimatter energy erupted from Revelation's bow, slicing through the void with surgical precision. The Arakthal flagship had no time to react, its shields barely flickered before collapsing. The beam tore through its hull like paper, splitting the cruiser in half from prow to stern. On Varys's bridge, alarms screamed. Officers shrieked in disbelief as their commander's ship disintegrated before their eyes. The display flooded with warnings, hull breaches, reactor failures, catastrophic detonation. Within seconds, the flagship was nothing but debris, its pieces scattering like ash on the solar wind. Varys's jaw locked, his voice hoarse with rage and fear. All ships, return fire. Destroy them. But panic was already spreading. On Revelation's bridge, Reeves did not flinch. Fire at will. The order was carried with surgical precision. Rail cannons thundered, each shot a tungsten spear accelerated to velocities that could pierce a moon. Fusion torpedoes streaked into the dark like burning comets, detonating in blossoms of white fire that shredded entire squadrons. Beam lances cut swathes through the enemy line, carving ships apart in silence. The Arakthal patrol was caught in chaos. Their formations collapsed as their captains screamed over open calms. Some tried to scatter, engines flaring as they sought escape, but the Terran fleet moved like wolves, every fleeing vessel was cut down with ruthless precision. Varys's own ship shook violently as a rail slug punched through its stern, carving a molten hole across 3 decks. He staggered, his claws scrambling for balance, his eyes burning with disbelief. This cannot be happening, he whispered. But it was. In less than 3 minutes, 30 ships became wreckage. The silence of space swallowed their flames, leaving only debris fields drifting across Sol's orbit. The Terran fleet reformed without a word, their lines as sharp and precise as before. Inside Revelation, the bridge was quiet. Smoke still drifted from ruptured consoles, sparks hissing faintly as systems recalibrated. Reeves stood tall, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. That was the first strike, he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of inevitability. Now the galaxy knows we are awake. Whitfield's hologram flickered slightly as she spoke. The patrol sent a distress signal before we silenced them. Every empire within range will hear of this. Good, Hale said grimly. Let them come. But Whitfield's eyes lingered on Reeves, softer now. Admiral, humanity itself is gone. No families to protect. No colonies to defend. Only us. Why continue this war? Reeves turned to her, his face lit by the cold glow of the tactical display. Because the galaxy must remember. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. We will not fade into myth. We will be carved into memory, by fire if necessary. silence fell across the bridge. The ghosts of Terran officers Whitfield, Hale, Carter held Reeves's gaze, each knowing that this was more than vengeance. It was legacy. Outside, the fleet hung in orbit above their dead world, steel titans gleaming against the starlight. The War of the Dead had begun. The galaxy did not take long to respond. The destruction of the Irakthul patrol spread like wildfire across the void. Their broken transmissions, filled with static and screams, reached out across the stars before their ships were annihilated. In hours, the rumors spread to neighboring systems. In days, they reached the capitals of the great empires. The reports were dismissed at first. Ghost stories. Some whispered of ancient human ships rising from Sol's depths, but no one believed, not truly. The humans had been gone for 500,000 years. They were dust, myths told to frighten children, lessons in arrogance for new civilizations. But when the wreckage of 30 Irakthul cruisers drifted into alien hands, disbelief shattered. The weapon signatures, the designs of the ships, the precision of the strikes, none could be mistaken. It was human. It was Terran. Panic spread in equal measure to rage. Within weeks, alliances formed that had not existed in centuries. The Irakthul rallied their fleets, calling upon allies from the XYR Dominion and the Varan Unity. Even rivals who had once been locked in war set aside grudges. Fear bound them. Fear of the humans, who had clawed their way back from extinction. And so the largest armada in galactic history converged upon Sol. Tens of thousands of warships, their hulls blotting out the stars, their weapons humming with lethal purpose. They came to finish what time had begun. On board the Revelation, Admiral Jonathan Reeves stood at the center of the bridge, his gaze steady as the tactical display filled with crimson signals. The enemy was everywhere. The scale of their forces dwarfed even the greatest battles of humanity's living age. The holographic grid was nearly solid red, a tide of war pressing in from every angle. "They've brought everything," Whitfield said quietly, her voice carrying both awe and dread. "Overwhelming force," Hale muttered, fists clenched at his sides. "They're terrified." Reeves did not look away from the display. His holographic form flickered faintly, but his presence was unyielding. "Good. Fear is our weapon, just as much as steel." Emma Carter's youthful face turned toward him. "Sir, we can't hold against numbers like this." Her voice trembled, not from cowardice, but from the weight of truth. 1,000 against tens of thousands, we'll bleed them, but